I mean, you're obviously a self-confessed tech geek. You love a bit of tech.
Yeah,
you know what you're doing with it.
Yeah.
Do you think this technology has helped music production, or has it made it a bit too easy? It's a tough question, I think.
It's a tough question. When I started on tape machines. I had my first 1.5 to 2 years in audio recording on tape machines. And you couldn't do as much stuff. I didn't have the outboard equipment to have auto-tuning, so people just had to sing things in tune. And, you know, I listen back to my own recordings from those times, and every now and again I wince at a note that I've sung or something. But in general, you had to work harder. You had to get it right. If it wasn't right, you couldn't go, oh, I'll compile that take with that take with that take and just do it. You had to play it. So what you ended up with is you ended up with an audience that were used to listen to recordings that weren't perfect, and you ended up with players that were good enough to get away with it. And that's all they needed to be, good enough to get away with it. And you get a nice vibey band that had a good song, that were good enough to get away with it, mixed with an audience that weren't used to listening to perfection. And you've basically explained the 60s and the 70s. The Beatles were great at singing the harmonies, but if you listen through analytically, you know, there were bits that are out of tune, there's bits that are out of time, you can hear clicks bleeding from their headphones. I mean, the Stones, all over the place, and I don't mean that nastily. I mean, I've actually got a multi-track, all the stems of Bohemian Rhapsody, which a friend of mine gave me, which I probably shouldn't have. And there's mistakes in the playing of that, the individual guitar sounds, some of them aren't particularly nice, but you put them all together and it just kind of works, and you can't say why it works, it just works and it sounds vibey and the tempos are going up and down, and if you'd whack that into Pro Tools and try to even it all out and make it perfect, would Bohemian Rhapsody have sounded good? No, of course it wouldn't. It's yeah. There's a bit where Freddie's doing the "So you stop me and sit in my diddle diddle diddle," and he screams and he goes, "So you think you can love me and leave me to die?" And he's going ah, and his voice squeaks and it sounds awful. But there's 4 takes of those vocals, and when you put them all together, this one that almost distorts amongst the other 3 suddenly adds this life to the whole thing, and you can hear it on the single, but unless you've listened to the multi-track, you wouldn't know it's there. And it's one of those things that's a happy accident. It's a mistake that with modern engineering probably get cut out. Saying that, the ability that to be able to record an endless amount of things and not have to run out of tape and be able to automate things and get down to the level where this is a great vocal take. Unfortunately, he sung those 2 notes out of tune. You know, are we really going to lose a great vocal take because of 2 notes? And you just tweak them into position. No one will ever know. And I'm against going through every single note and turning someone who blatantly can't sing into a singer. But I'm also against losing a really good vibey take because one snare drum's out of time or one note went slightly out of tune. I mean, you ruin music by... I had this guy once come into a studio with an acoustic. I'll show you this. I'll grab an acoustic for this. And he had this song that started off with 2 chords, and he'll know who he is if he ever watches this. I would say he's part of the reason that I stopped working in a studio. And he had this song which basically started off with an A minor and then went to an A major, and it had all downstrum, so it went... Now, I make no criticism whatsoever of the part of the song. That's of no consequence to me. What I make a criticism of is that we spent 7 hours recording that intro, which was a few bars long, because he would go in there and play it and come out and listen and go, that sounds great. And I go, right, lovely, let's move on. No, can you zoom into it? And I want to check it against the click. And he'd see that it was one strum was milliseconds out. Go, no, I'm going to go in there and do it again. And I said to him, you're killing your music. You're getting progressively worse each time. You said it sounded great. Stop looking at it on a screen. We got 7 hours into the session and I was losing the plot with it. And I did get a little bit angry. I said, honestly, I don't want to do this anymore. You know, this is getting ridiculous. You had it right, you know, in the first half hour. And he turned around to me and effectively insulted me. He went, maybe this is why you haven't had a #1 single and I'm going to. You know, and I thought to myself, I'm sorry, you know, you're just not. I'm a very patient person and I don't mind if someone comes in and they can't play and I'll help them out and do whatever. You know, I'm not the best player in the world, I'm not the best producer or engineer in the world, none of those things. but we work to our strengths and we let other people do the things they're good at. And this guy was just rude for the sake of being rude, and it did annoy me. And it was around that time that I set up my computer business and moved out of doing engineering, because I thought to myself, I don't want to work with people who come in with a £300 Japanese Telecaster and a small Fender amp and go, I've got to use this stuff because that's my sound, man. You know, it's not your sound. You've been to a local music shop, bought your budget stuff, and there's nothing unique or, you know, I've got tons of vintage amps and a whole guitar collection around here. Why don't you try it different? So, no, I've got to use this and that because that's my sound, man. Well, I'd respect you more if you were Brian May and you had a custom Vox AC30 set up and a guitar you made yourself with your dad. And fair enough, that's your sound. But so, yeah, there's a lot of idiots out there. I want it to sound like the album. I want someone to shut their eyes and think that I'm miming. You know, that would be the ultimate praise.